Live from our studio here at Koko Mlemle, Accra, this is Joy News Prime with me, Samuel Kojo Brace, live on Joy News and Joy Prime, also live on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. Coming up this hour, Public Interest and Accountability Committee insists government breached Petroleum Revenue Management Act when it illegally paid oil revenues into offshore account as they take their turn before the motion of Censure Committee.
Our position as a committee, Mr. Chairman, is that lifting, whether it is lifted by 100% subsidiary of GNPC or not, ought to come first into the Petroleum Holding Fund, from where disbursements can be made for whatever reason.
But GNPC says that should not be the case, insisting no law was breached and Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta cannot be blamed.
100% of the revenue cannot be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. The company must operate, and if at the end of the day it declares profit and the directors decide that dividend must be paid, that money is paid to GNPC, and that money paid, of course, will be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund.
Also, Food and Beverages Importers Association questions timing of Bank of Ghana's decision to withdraw support for goods classified as non-essential, warning that the directive could be dire for the local market because the country is ill-prepared for the impending shocks.
We speak now, we have no data on these things. Day-old chickens we don't have. We are currently importing day-old chickens from Belgium, day-old chickens from Morocco. And indeed, the farmers are not even getting enough. If you speak to poultry producers, they will tell you that yes, the policy is a good policy, but we are not prepared.
Now, following Joy News report, EPA asked Cheme, a German company operating in Ashiye here in Accra, to, as a matter of urgency, improve the quality of the Fulani Lake, following investigations into the sudden coloration of the water.
So that the water has changed color. And one time when we were passing, we saw that all the aquatic animals, especially the fish, have started dying.
Now, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, has corroborated allegations by the minority in Parliament in their censure motion that government illegally paid $100 million in oil revenues into an offshore account. The money forms part of proceeds of crude oil export in the first half of this year and was lodged in the account of Jubilee Oil Holding Limited, which is registered outside Ghana. Speaking at the censure motion hearings, Vice President of PIAC, Nasir Alpha Mohammed, said the amount formed part of the country's petroleum revenue and belonged to the state.
Or indirect participation of the Republic shall first and foremost be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. Mr. Chairman, it is the considered view of the committee that it matters not that other issues may be introduced into the whole conversation. What matters for us, our understanding of the law, is that the PRMA is the primary law that governs the utilization, management of petroleum revenues. And it says that any revenue accruing to the state, whether directly or indirectly, should first be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. Mr. Chairman, we also know that GNPC is the primary commercial arm of the Republic of Ghana in petroleum activities. And so when this happens, we are dealing with GNPC per se. If you look at the whole GOHL transaction, it is GNPC that undertook those transactions. So our position as a committee, Mr. Chairman, is that lifting, whether it is lifted by 100% subsidiary of GNPC or not, ought to come first into the Petroleum Holding Fund, from where disbursements can be made for whatever reason. So, Mr. Chairman, our position on that matter is clear. Of course, for purposes of disclosure, the GNPC referred us to an advice from the Attorney General Department purporting to okay such a transaction in the nature and manner that they dealt with this issue. Mr. Chairman, we are happy to say that we did not come to this conclusion without recourse to that particular advice.
Now, Nasir Alpha Mohammed argued that the fund should have first been launched in a petroleum holding fund according to law before any disbursement to any other account could have been made.
What happened was we considered that opinion thoroughly. We explored all the laws, in our opinion, that border around this issue. And we still came to an independent opinion, which we stand by on any day, that those revenues ought to have formed part of the petroleum revenues of Ghana and ought to have been deposited first in the petroleum holding fund and not any other account. So for us, it was contrary to law for that money to have been deposited in any account, if at all.
Now, however, taking their turn before the Censure Committee, the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation says there was no illegality committed in the lodging of the funds in an account other than the Petroleum Holding Fund. Listen to Deputy Chief Executive in charge of Commerce and Business Strategy at GNPC, Joseph Dadze. He was responding to questions from the co-chair of the committee, Dr. Dominic Aine.
The monies were obviously paid directly to Jubilee Holdings, right?
Yes, Honorable Chair. Yeah.
Are those monies that ought first to have been paid into a petroleum holding fund?
Yeah, so that's a point of departure, the area of disagreement. We believe that GOHL.
Wait a minute. Who are you disagreeing with? You are departing from where? Point of departure. He asked you a question, so deal with it. Point of departure. You are departing from.
So what PIAC? So I'm alluding to what PIAC said. So we disagree with PIAC's assertion that it should have been paid to.
So why? Can you explain to the committee why you disagree?
Yeah. So Honorable Chair, as it was discussed during the PIAC testimony or submission, GOHL is 100% subsidiary of GNPC. We believe it's a company incorporated. It's a company registered under the Company Act, and obviously the terms and conditions, the constitution of GOHL is governed by the Company Act, and for that reason, 100% of the revenue cannot be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. The company must operate, and if at the end of the day it declares profit and the directors decide that dividend must be paid, that money is paid to GNPC, and that money paid, of course, will be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. So we believe that GOHL is governed by the Company Act, not by the Petroleum Revenue Management Act.
Now, the Deputy CEO at GNPC argued that Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, who is blamed for this transaction by the minority, cannot be held responsible.
Need to understand is that in all of this, what relates to the Finance Minister in terms of the allegation made against him? What is it about it?
I mean, as far as GOHL is concerned, I mean, the Finance Minister is not responsible for the revenues. I mean, obviously, we have to, at the end of the day, submit our financials, GRA. We have to pay whatever assessed tax that we need to pay. And let me say that in 2023, GOHL paid 17 million. 2021, I'm sorry, I'm 1 year ahead of. 2021, GOHL paid 17 million to GRA as tax on its operations. So, yeah, as far as the revenue is concerned, I don't think the Finance Minister has any direct, let me call it, control.
I read the GNPC Act, I read the Company Act, and the other acts under consideration. My understanding is entirely the same as the way you understand it, so I'll pass it on to my other colleagues.
Case, was any money paid into an offshore account? The 100 million, was it paid into an offshore account?
So Honorable Chair, I think the word offshore, when we use, I mean, for those who are bankers, I mean, you can even have an offshore account in Ghana. So I think the word, when we say offshore, sometimes I get a bit confused because the Bank of Ghana has certain categorizations of what you call it, foreign currency. And so what we call FCA have offshore account. But to the extent that the question relates to receipt from sale of crude, yeah, it was paid into an account held at Ghana International Bank in London.
Okay, and who made the payment?
So the buyer of the crude. So buyers of the crude, even in the case of PHF, the buyers of the crude pay directly into the PHF. So they pay directly into whichever account that you designate for them to pay.
Now, joining us on Zoom is the ranking member on Mines and Energy Committee, John Jinapor. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, what do you make of the conflicting testimonies between PIAC and GNPC on the payment of some of these petroleum funds into an offshore account? Though the GNPC argues that it still belongs to the company, which of course is for Ghana.
So if it belongs to the company and it's for Ghana, you pay it into the Petroleum Holding Fund. But that is what the law says. I'm not surprised that GNPC was struggling because they were not being forthright. And my first advice to Mr. Dazi is that he should be very, very cautious. He's under oath. And if he peddles falsehood and deliberately does so, that is perjury. Secondly, you shouldn't forget that you appear before the Mines and Energy Committee. This is just a fact-finding committee. And whatever he says there can't go against him. GNPC appeared before the Mines and Energy Committee, and they were categorical that they did not intend keeping JOHL as a company. In fact, they told us that they wanted to buy the shares directly. But Anadaku told them that in order to transfer the shares, they needed to establish GOHL as an offshore company. And so that company was nothing but a special purpose vehicle to serve as a receptacle to take the shares and transfer it to GNPC. If GNPC is a company that pays dividend, who is the managing director? Who is the accountant? Who are the officials of the company? Secondly, today at the committee, he himself, under oath, admits that they should have come to Parliament under Act 919, Section 1015, to seek approval from Parliament before contracting a loan. They have blatantly failed to do that. It's a prerequisite. And I think that the Minister of Finance should know better that they cannot advance any loan to GNPC. The law, Act 815, just a moment, even as I quote to you, section, just 1 minute.
Well, so you're still
Section 3 says that the payment should be made into the Petroleum Holding Fund from whatever sources those shares or oil shares were paid for by the states. They were not paid for by GNPC. And let me put this on record, and it will come to bear tomorrow. The state did not even pay the money. The shares were paid in lieu of capital gain tax, which should have also been paid in the Petroleum Holding Fund. So look, GNPC can attempt to dribble anybody, but they won't dribble some of us because we know what we're doing, we understand the law, and as far as I'm concerned, what GNPC has done in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance is a blatant disregard for the law, and some of us will not allow that to stand. It will simply not stand.
Okay, just by way of education, is it my understanding that if GNPC does any transaction in terms of the sale of crude, it must necessarily then transfer those accruing revenue into the petroleum account, other than into its own account?
Yes, the law is clear that all petroleum revenues, and like I said, petroleum revenues due the Republic derived from whatever sources shall be assessed and transferred into the Petroleum Holding Fund. So if GNPC even requires 100% of that revenue, it's not a problem. Just put the money in the Petroleum Holding Fund so that all of us know that X amount landed in the fund. And you can transfer even all the money to GNPC.
So the issue is not about whether the money is there or has been charged, but about the money not directly being paid into the petroleum fund.
If the money is not paid into the fund, you can't tell where the money is. Until the money is paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund, now we are hearing that it's even outside Ghana, sitting in an account for over 1 year as we speak. That is the problem with these issues. If it had been paid into the fund, we would have known that this is the fund, it's paid into the account, X amount was transferred, X is left. It's as simple as that. And so when he says that Parliament is aware of JOHL as a company, Mr. Dazi, let me put it on record, it's misleading Parliament. And we would probe this matter further and ensure that it is dealt with. We have no business keeping JOHL. What is it supposed to do? You tell me. It's only supposed to add on the cost. Meanwhile, you already have Exloco as your commercial wing. Now you are forming JOHL as another commercial wing. Who does this?
Well, when they appeared before your committee, within which time did they tell you they would obviously be making away with that company when they are done with the Anadaco sale?
This is in 2001. And this is on record before a committee as part of their work program.
Is it 2021 or 2001?
2021, sorry, 2021.
Okay.
That JOHL was only a receptacle. It was not intended to be a company that will exist. And that once Anadaco gets GNPC to take over JOHL, they would liquidate or close that company and then transfer the shares to Exloco. And for emphasis, SIGA, which is the State Interest and Governance Agency, also posted on their website, and I'll send it to you, where they confirmed that GNPC was acquiring that 7% to be transferred to Exloco. So what they are saying doesn't hold. It cannot stand the test of time. And let me assure them, they can say that to the committee because some of the committee members are not technical people in this sector. But they will surely appear before the Mines and Energy Committee. And I bet them they will do the right thing whether they like it or not.
How does what is happening play into the favor of the finance minister who is scheduled to appear before the other committee tomorrow?
It tells you a complete failure. The finance minister is supposed to superintend over all those revenues. And so he cannot escape liability. He is supposed to ensure, because when you read the act defines minister as the finance minister. He is to ensure that those revenues are paid into the designated accounts. Okay. And so for me, as far as I'm concerned, the finance minister is liable, he's culpable, and he has no business even sitting in that office as we speak.
Grateful to you, John Jinapo, for joining us. He is ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. Now, pressure is still mounting on President Akufo-Addo to sack his finance minister. The latest to re-echo the call is no other than a senior member of the Council of Elders of the New Patriotic Party, Kojo. He is asking President Akufo-Addo to heed to calls by MPP members of Parliament and sack Ken Ofori-Atta. This follows mounting pressure from different quarters, including majority MPs who are refusing to do business with the minister in the House. Speaking with Raymond Akon Upfront Tuesday, the former chief of staff under the erstwhile John Kufuor administration believes the minister's continuous stay in office will further divide the government and the MPP.
I believe the way forward is with our president. He has the executive power, and he's talking with his MPs. So you should listen to his MPs, call them again, talk to them, and find a solution to what is happening. Well, if that's what it is, and I believe they might have given the president the reasons why they believe the finance minister must go. The president should also listen to his MP, and I think do what I believe is the right thing.
Which means he should agree to sack the finance minister.
Well, if you have a finance minister who is being, or the minority in parliament is trying to censure, and then your whole majority side is also saying that we don't want him as the finance minister, it means there's a problem. You are telling us the parliament. Parliament on the whole is saying that, please, Mr. President, this gentleman, we don't want him as the finance minister, and say do something about that. I think it'd be the right thing for the president to do. He should listen to them and do what I believe the right thing is. That is, let the finance minister go.
Now, moving on to other stories. The Food and Beverages Importers Association is questioning the timing of the Bank of Ghana's decision to withdraw support of goods classified as non-essential, warning that the directive could be dire for the local market because the country is ill-prepared to deal with the shocks. Importers of non-essential goods such as poultry, vegetable oil and toothpaste will not be provided Forex to import these products. It comes as prices of such goods continue to increase in the wake of the fluctuating cedi and rising inflation. In a bid to stem this and control import, government has indicated it will review the standards required for importation into the country. Take a listen to Information Minister Kojo Kroma.
As a first step, what the central bank is doing with the banks is to limit the availability of Forex for the importation of some of these items that have been mentioned. Rice, poultry, vegetable oil, fruit juices, etc. as a first step. The second is that we are working to boost local production, and that's where he mentions working with the local system to boost local production. Because if you do not take care at a go, you may create shortages on the market that will lead to a further increase in the prices.
Now, the Bank of Ghana's memo to the bank cited by Joy Business is in line with the President's directive issued during his recent address to the nation on the Ghanaian economy. But speaking on the pulse on Joy News with Blessed Soga, executive member of the Food and Beverages Importers Association, John Awini, says although the policy is a good one, it is not based on informed data from the market, and it will impact consumption patterns and businesses severely.
Face value, it is a very good policy in the sense that we are in very difficult and critical times. Indeed, even we are not even difficult and critical times. It's to promote local production or to promote the consumption of locally produced goods is a very good thing. No country and no family can continue to rely on outside supply. So for me, in terms of economics, that is right. But I would say that the timing is wrong. I would say that the decision is not being formulated based on great information.
What's your fear generally? That we're not sufficient? Is that the argument you're making?
The argument is that clearly we have not prepared for this as a country. And that is a fact. You have Joy FM in the last week. You ran stories, and I clearly listened to it, where the president of the Ghana Rights to the professional body. I was the president of that body for I think 4 years. I listened to him and I was very interested in the story. And the man lamented the same story that I talked about and lamented about when I was the president in 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. That the industry lacks support, it lacks government support. I again also listened to the president of or the chairman of the Ghana Poultry Producers Association. And he said on your station that if the government doesn't take care, the 2% that we are producing locally will eventually collapse, and it will be that we will be importing 100%. If these people just spoke last week, and also my checks on the ground, I have one of the executives and a big poultry producer just by me. They returned from Morocco. And indeed, he gave me a story that was quite embarrassing. He said, in fact, the Moroccan government, at a point in their meeting, asked the president that, what is the total consumption of poultry in Ghana? And the president couldn't answer, not due to no fault of his. An individual doesn't do census. So as we speak now, my brother, we don't know how many goats we have in this country. We don't know how many cows we produce in this country. We don't know how many fowls or whatever we produce in this country. As we speak now, we have no data on these things. Day-old chickens, we don't have. We are currently importing day-old chickens from Belgium, day-old chickens from Morocco. And indeed, the farmers are not even getting enough. If you speak to poultry producers, they will tell you that, yes, the policy is a good policy, but we are not prepared.
Well, a banking analyst, Dr. Richmond Etuahene, believes it is great that a country wants to reduce importation of a produce like rice, but it must be done strategically when our local farmers can provide or deal with the surplus. He joins us now on phone with more. Doc, grateful that you could join us. Why do you say what I just read there? What's the reasoning behind your thinking? Hello, Doc. Can you hear me? Hello, Doc. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Doc, can you hear me? I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me? All right, so we'll come back to this particular story. We'll try and work the lines well so we can speak to Dr. Richmond Etuahini. He believes government must, take its time in the implementation of this directive. But the minority in parliament say government must suspend the implementation of the Customs Amendment Act 2020, specifically Section 61. The law requires used vehicles imported into Ghana should be accompanied by a valid certificate of conformance from an approved body. Importers of used vehicles have criticized the directive as one that will collapse their businesses. Speaking to Joy News, a ranking member on the Roads and Transport Committee governs, Kwame Agbaja, said implementing the law will price out the poor from owning vehicles in the country.
Passed a law trying to regulate specifically to make vehicles that come to the country safer for both the users and other people in the country. That is accepted. But I want to call upon the Ghana Standards Authority to hasten slowly, probably suspend the implementation on this basis. They must learn from the hasty implementation of the luxury vehicle tax. They must learn from the hasty suspension of the collection of road tolls. They must learn from other laws that were passed in this house and without adequate preparation, consultation, and public education implemented and drove us all into problem. As we speak, that 891 that we are talking about talked about the fact that we are going to set up a new system where brand new vehicles are assembled in this country to make them more available. The first question is, how many companies are assembling vehicles in this country, and what are the choices of vehicles available to the Ghanaian? Are those vehicles at prices that the ordinary Ghanaian, a journalist, a teacher, a nurse can afford? Even thinking of when we pass the law and the state of the economy today, even if you are selling those vehicles for $5,000, do you know what $5,000 means to the average Ghanaian that will buy them? Then we go to the point of used vehicles needing to have conformance certificate. Nobody is encouraging vehicles that have been totally condemned. I mean, accident vehicles that are no longer fit for purpose to be brought to this country.
Now, the Adaklu MP argued that more stakeholder conversations must be had prior to implementation, warning the implementation will fail without this.
All we are saying is that since we passed the law, I am not aware that the Ghana Standards Authority even approached the committee on the relevant committees in Parliament, Transport, Trade and Industry, to tell them about the implementation plan. I am not aware that Ghana Standards Authority have done any stakeholder consultation between the, used vehicle traders, mechanics, Parliament, and anybody, for everybody to be on board as to how this is going to be implemented. Imagine if by the 1st of January, you say that people cannot import vehicles. What does that mean to the economy? What does that mean to the used car traders? I don't think we are there yet. Nobody is kicking against the law, but I don't think we have done enough to make the implementation of this law smooth enough. So that's the reason I'm calling on them to suspend this implementation and do further consultation. And I'm aware that colleagues on the Trade and Industry Committee are in a process of holding them before Parliament to explain the roadmap so that we all be on the same page. At this pace, it's going to create another mess in the country.
Governor Agbaja is the spokesperson for the minority on the Roads and Transport Subcommittee of Parliament. Now, to our earlier story, where the Bank of Ghana is cautioning banks to, not control the release of Forex to traders in items they classify as non-essential. A banking analyst, Dr. Richmond Etuahini, believes it is great that a country wants to reduce importation of produce like rice, but it must be done strategically when our local farmers are ready. He joins us on phone now with more. Doc, grateful that you could join us. Why are you saying so?
Thank you very much, and thank you for your cherished listeners. I'm saying so that we spend so much importing rice. To me, we should have done this as far back as maybe 2010. So that we could have saved almost the 900 million over the 10 years would have been 9 billion. Unfortunately, it looks like nobody wanted to take the bull by the horn. But my only caution is that we should see the capacity of our local producers, right? And we should almost target the timing, so that it shouldn't be in an abrupt. Because if we are not producing enough worth of the 900 million over the year, and we cut it off, we're going to have a problem with the food crisis. So I would have loved it that there should be a strategic approach where we have a gradual approach of exit. And by that time, we would have known how much we are supporting the local rice producers. Because in rice production,
but if you consider how the city, if you consider how the city is, if you consider how the city is weakening against major trading currencies like the dollar, isn't this one way the Bank of Ghana can then try to control it? What do you make of that particular move by the BOG?
I've said it already. I think it's a fantastic approach. But you see, when you come in with a big bang without coming as to how we're going to address the gap addressing how much do we consume and how much are we producing, so that we can stagger it in such a way that we would not create another crisis when we haven't found a substitute to it. It's been done in Nigeria, those of you who read a lot. When they started this rise, they were importing a lot. But they decided, I think, 2021, they decided to scale it down. And I believe that we need to have this sort of approach so that we can save the currency. We need to save the currency, but we must be very, very, we must adopt some gradual exit approach so that we don't come from one problem and face another problem. That is my only point.
Okay. Grateful to you, Doc, for joining us. Dr. Richmond Tuahene is a governance and corporate consultant there. We'll take a quick break here, but still to come here on the Joy News Prime. Welcome back from the break. Now, producer inflation hit a record high of 65.2% to compound the already difficult situation of consumers who are already grappling with the inflation rate of 40.4%. Industry players are worried the latest upward adjustment in inflation will adversely impact their already struggling businesses. I've been joined by Head of Industrial Statistics at the Ghana Statistical Service, Anthony Kraka. Now, thank you so much for joining. Help us understand the key drivers of this 65.2% producer inflation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And good evening to viewers. In the Ghana Statistical Service release of October 2022, as you rightly said, we report that the producer price index inflation have increased by 65.2%. It's as a result mainly resulting from the increases in the inflation rate in the mining and quarry sector, manufacturing, and electricity and gas, water supplies, sewage, and also that for transportation and storage and accommodation and food activities.
All right.
Notice that.
I'm grateful that you could break it down for us to really understand. But let me hear the point you wanted to make.
Yes. So these are the major subsectors that contributed to the drive in the inflation rate from the producer inflation rate from the 45.9% to 65.2% in October.
All right. I'm grateful for joining us. Well, my colleague Isaac Ofieje has been analyzing data from both consumer and producer inflation bulletins, and he joins me in the studio with the finding. Now, does the producer inflation have any impact on consumer inflation?
So this is a hypothesis that we actually wanted to test. So you are right, consumer inflation is now 40.4%, producer inflation 65.2%. But is there any impact on consumer inflation when producer inflation is up? So we collected data right from 2021 and 2022 to test this hypothesis. And if you look at this beautiful scatter plot that we were able to actually put together, it actually establishes, a positive correlation between producer inflation and consumer inflation. So it simply means that when you have producer inflation going up, we expect that consumer inflation will also go up. So if we have producer inflation going up by 1%, then we are estimating that consumer inflation will also go up by 0.63%, holding other things constant.
Will the surge in consumer inflation continue? If you can do that for me in 30 seconds.
Well, that's what I said. So if we assume that producer inflation hit, let's say 70%, then we expect consumer inflation to also hover around, let's say 43%.
Okay, right, grateful. Now let's move on and talk about Ashiye, because we understand that yesterday when we did a report about how the lake, the Fulani Lake, has been polluted by a company operating there. Today we understand that there's a change there, but the community members have been speaking to Joy News on how the company's operations has polluted the only source of water in the community. Listen.
My well changed color and became dark, same color as the lake. The company later advised me to sink a new well at a different location, but I declined because I couldn't afford.
A lot of people are sick and all that. If they get their money, do they give it to them? They should remove the factory and take it away to wherever they are going to take it.
Patrick Awunterim is a commercial bus driver and has lived in this community for about a year.
This is not the way. First, people drink this water here. Formerly, people were drinking the water. That was what they told me. Why is it that recently this water is always it's just because the rainfall 2 days ago and then it pushes the black. You could have seen how the water is. We are struggling with galamsey. And a lot of things are happening.
Well, you heard a resident of Ashiye speaking there to my colleague, Latif Idris. But Kofi Ajay is still with me in studio with details from the EPA report. Now, Kofi, what do we know? What is the EPA saying in this?
So the research team actually just took samples from the lake and then actually tested for 10 indicators. And out of these 10 indicators, they realized that out of the 10, 5 of them were actually, they were actually contaminated in terms of the color of the water. You had 10 black, and then also if you look at the turbidity level of the water was also high. And so they made a conclusion that if you look at the samples they collected and the conclusion they came across, then it will simply tell you that the company, which is MC, is not responsible for this contamination or this pollution that the people are actually saying. But they made some recommendations. First is that the community members as well as MC companies should report if they see that the water is being polluted or contaminated to the authorities, and also they are recommending that as part of corporate social responsibilities, MC should help clean the water.
Grateful, Kofi, and thank you so much for that one there. But the Chief Executive Officer of the Design and Technology Institute, DTI, Constance Swanika, has announced that the institution is relocating from PIAC to Brekuso due to the increase in enrollment. Speaking at DTI's third graduation ceremony at the Nubike Foundation, she indicated that the ceremony wasn't held on campus because of their population size. There's more in the following report.
The Design and Technology Institute prides itself as being Ghana's first privately accredited technical and vocational education and training institute. The institution is an inclusive creative space for all members of its community, regardless of one's background. Within 3 years of its establishment, the institution has increased its population from 32 to 200. The development, according to the Chief Executive Officer of the institute, is the reason behind the relocation.
The change of venue from our small 1.5-acre campus at Impeazem to this place has been necessitated by the fact that DTI has grown. From an initial cohort of 32 learners in 2019, we now have 227 learners. This is an explosive growth of over 600% in just 3 years. This is staggering and has come about as a result of the hard work of the entire DTI team, as well as the program offerings and the talent and dedication of our learners. It is my pleasure to inform you that DTI is relocating from our campus to a new 10-acre campus at Brekusu, opposite the Aseshi University. To cope with the increased numbers, this has been made possible to CIFA and KFW, who are providing an amount of 1.8 million euros towards phase 1 of the construction, and an amount of 700,000 euros to purchase equipment. Our new campus has space for an industrial park, and we hope several Ghanaian companies will set up there to take advantage of our trained and skilled learners, as well as our Center of Excellence and our Material Science Library.
In his address, former senior partner manager of Twitter Africa, Bernard Kafui, urged the graduates to be determined and chase their dreams.
Growing up, it was quite demoralizing being a creative and design student, or any technical or vocational course that required you to use your hands. It was the norm to be looked down upon by our peers, and even sometimes our parents. The dream of most parents was for their child to become a medical doctor, lawyer, or a banker. That night at the shed was one of the many moments I felt discouraged, inferior to my mates, to the point where I began to question if the path I chose will get me somewhere in the future. But as time advanced, I came to realize that if there is one thing the world cannot do without, it's creativity, design, and technology. Think about this for a second. Whenever we watch any futuristic movie, or a movie that attempts to depict the future, the only obvious thing that is used to portray that the world is improving and advancing is modern design and technological advancements. Whether in the hospitals, banks, or law courts, every aspect of life in a futuristic movie is depicted to be advanced by showing an improvement in cars, machinery, everyday tools, and appliances. As fast as the world is evolving, so must you also evolve to succeed. Today, I want to tell each one of you graduating from DTI that you have been equipped to succeed.
Assistant head of the school, Abigail Mercier-Pong-Tete, happily announced that some DTI students are already making huge strides in various sectors of the Ghanaian economy.
We are just 3 years old. This is the third graduation, but our students are sought after. They are all over. And like I mentioned, 3 of us, actually 4, they won awards. There was this sprint competition done by Impact Hub with Mana Mobility, by Siemens, and 8 of the 8 award winners, 3 came from DTI, and they competed against students from the universities, and our students stood tall amongst them. And then one of them also won a logo competition done by Mana Mobility, and he got a MacBook Pro as the prize.
All right, so now time for us to bring you showbiz. And Noella Karin Iyale is here.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Hardly. As for you, sometimes I don't know how to describe you.
Hey.
I have to go through my books, my literature books, to get some words.
Right.
When I went to do agriculture in the university, I might have done away with some of my literary terms, but I have to go back to them so I can describe you better.
No problem.
Anyway,
that's flattering. Thank you so much.
I'm not flattering, I'm telling the truth. Yeah.
Thank you. But anyway, come 23rd December, Kiss Daniel will be in Ghana for the Kiss Daniel Live in Ghana concert.
Can we do Buga?
Of course. No, but the top song in Ghana right now is Cough, or what Ghanaians know as Odoho, Odoyo.
I didn't know of the song until the other time when I was speaking to my wife.
Right.
And then she tells me her favorite now is Cough, and I should play it.
Right.
And I was like, what is cough? Then she says Odeo. So I had to go to
yeah.
YouTube and look for Odeo, and I fell in love with the song immediately.
Awesome. So yeah, he had an interview with Lexus Bill on Joy FM's Drive Time show, and he actually revealed that he never anticipated that both the songs, that's Buga and Cough, would be, hit songs.
Actually, before I put out my songs, I always know that the Kiss Daniel fan base will chop out. So that one is, but the truth is, for Buga, I never knew to, turn out to be this big of a hit.
Wow.
It happened really, really fast. In less than a week, it became a serious pandemic. It was too fast.
It was so fast, yeah. and
I said to myself, I was gonna drop a hit song before my concert in London. The Brixton Academy. I said to myself that I want to drop a new song and I want it to be a hit before my concert. And I dropped Buga a week before my concert, and I used Buga to end my concert.
Oh, damn. Odoyewu is a Ghanaian, it's Chi, right?
Is it Chi? Is it pronounced Chi?
Yeah, it's Chi. It's our local language here. But somebody in the comments actually said that it was Yoruba. Is that it?
No, Odoyewu means my love now.
Yes.
Chi, yeah.
Yes. So it's not a Yoruba term in any way. You were literally picking a Ghanaian term.
Yeah, that's it.
So what made you decide to take a local Ghanaian term like that to weave a song out like that?
Because first, aside from the fact that we are neighbors, and also because Buga stayed on #1 in Ghana the longest out of all the African countries.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
All right, so that's Kiss Daniel.
Yeah, and we are excited, of course.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, probably tomorrow we'll do the challenge together. Are you up for it?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Right, we'll do it then. So anyway, let's talk about Sarkodie.
Okay.
So on YouTube currently, one of his biggest streaming songs is Adonai, which featured Castro.
Yeah.
Right, and he's been telling us how that song came about and how he still hopes that one day he'll see Castro.
Oh.
Adonai still remains your most viewed song on YouTube.
My biggest record ever.
Biggest record?
Yes.
Wow. In terms of viewership?
Everything.
Revenue?
Yes. And that will trigger down to everything because that's your biggest. So I'm talking worldwide. I've not been able to beat that. And it used to be a problem for me that I want to beat it, but I'm like, well, you're trying to beat your own song. It doesn't even make sense. Because if it was somebody else and then the person is going to be the one performing that song, and I can't have that. And I think it's hard for artists to have that one song. Like, all you need is just that.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you're a jam person, you have 3, 4, 10, but it's likely you have just 1, 2. Because as big as you are, you will be way bigger to your fan base who care about your music. So they will know all these songs. But for the song that will be bigger than you, that people love, they don't have to know you. That's hard. It was an inspirational music, and the melody was good. I will have to pretend like I know why a song becomes.
Okay.
Right, so that's Sarkodie there. My last story to you would be, next week, Thursday, Ghana will be playing Portugal, right? And our musicians have been rallying behind our stars by way of anthems or music. So we have one from I almost said Kiss Daniel. Kim Promise.
Okay.
We have one from Kim Promise. We have one from Kweku Flake and Akwabwa. Kojo.
You know what? See, Wednesday night. You don't know what happened. I tell you what. Wednesday.
Yeah, I trust you.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you
Noella.
too.
And that's how we wrap up today's bulletin. There's more news on myjoyonline.com. My name is Samuel Kojo.